So now on a personal note, and we'll start from here again. What is one thing that God has taught you and grown you guys in, being married so long and so forth, in your own heart and in your own life, is what is God has taught you as a husband and maybe as a father and through the marriage time?
Well, they always say two of the greatest sanctifying things in your life is going to be marriage and then having kids. And I heard that going in, but didn't really understand what that meant until getting married. And then you start to realize all the selfishness that rises up in your heart when you're first married, and then kids come along, and it's all starting all over again. So the Lord just has worked in my heart, just showing me my own pride and my own wanting myself to be at the center of everything, and just realizing the key to marriage has been dying to yourself, and the key to raising the kids has been dying to self, and ministering to them and loving them. It's been and it continues to grow. Even 28 years later, you realize anytime you feel angst in your heart or some kind of dissatisfaction, you say, that's just myself and my pride welling back up again. So, yeah.
Amen. In so many ways, I think that's true of what I've learned as well. I think it's being a husband and the leader of your home is such a high calling, and to be responsible for shepherding your family, that is sobering. That is sobering. And so there's been a whole lot of learning and growing in that. And having been married only for 5 years, there's been a whole lot more growing, I think, than that we have to go compared to many of where you guys are at. But I'd say one of the joys of marriage too for me in terms of growth in the Lord is obviously been dependence on the Lord, realizing that, man, I am totally dependent on the Lord for this high calling. But also the joy of having someone to run the race with has been an area of, I don't know if you'd call it growth, but just it's been a joy. It's been a joy having someone to really lock shields with and to run the race with, because I think we often say we're not called to run this race by ourselves. We need each other, be it the body, and certainly having a wife for me has been such a joy and a privilege. And as a father, some of the gifts of, as you're a father, just getting to see that relationship manifested with our own Heavenly Father is really sweet. So I shared with you all a couple of weeks ago, just that moment when your child is born and you lay eyes on them for the very first time, and there's just this incredible sense of, you didn't have to earn my love, you didn't have to do anything for it, I just love you. And it's even unique for marriage. I don't think anything can touch our love for our spouses, but there's just something uniquely profound about that moment with your own children, and I think it's a picture of the Father's love for us. So, yeah.
As I think back on the just the relationship with Chris over the years, wow, two things to share. One is that I have been so blessed to see how God has produced the beautiful character of Christ in her. From the very beginning, there were things about truth that she understood before I did, and we wrestled through those things together. It wasn't long after we were married that she got lupus, and we were in seminary. And her whole life, as she has grown and been such a faithful partner, I have seen her give up her life, for the family and for the Lord. But I'd be in seminary writing papers 2 in the morning, and she'd be typing faithfully in the kitchen, this little house, just, here's the next one. And I'd get overwhelmed, and she'd say, just take one day at a time, honey. She said that many times to me, and encouraged my faith, because she's really a great woman of faith. And then all these, the lupus in San Antonio was literally killing her. That's why we moved to Denver. But the doctors at one point said, you need to give your little boys phone numbers so that if you die, they can have somebody to call, because it was affecting her spinal column and her nervous system, her brain, her heart. And she had blood clots in the lungs a couple times, things like that. But to see her just be so faithful in the midst of it has been a great blessing to me. Her sweet Christ-likeness to me, and helped me keep fighting. The other thing that's been a blessing with her over the years is that theologically we have grown together the whole time. She is a great theologian. We interact on the truth. It's wonderful to have a woman who loves the truth and who loves understanding the truth. I sharpen iron with her. I can remember one night I was preaching the next day, about 7 at night. I bring her my sermon and reading it to her, and she goes, "That's terrible." And okay, where's the application? What are you saying? You're just giving a bunch of intellectual stuff. I went back and rewrote the sermon, that night, but I've needed that from her. So the partnership, the joy, she laughs at my jokes, I like that. And she's just such a blessing, and had to fight the whole way. So praise God for Chris.
So I'd agree with Robert that it's marriage really exposes selfishness, and I would say it was very much me with Kim, and I'm very grateful for Kim. She just has a very sweet spirit. She is a very kind person, very thoughtful person, and I realized that I wasn't when I married her. And so that was a blessing. So those were things that were revealed to me. And looking back at all the people I dated up until Kim, one of the things I really realize now, having all these years with her, is she just really deeply loves the Lord, and she wants our children to deeply love the Lord too. And I just can't express how grateful I am to be married to somebody who is just that way. And so we're so linked in heart in that way. And I wouldn't be able to minister. I would not be able to minister the way I do if I didn't have her. So I'm very grateful. So the Lord has taught me a lot through being married, and I'm just eternally grateful.
So a couple of things about Heidi and just marriage in general that God has shown me is, like Robert and Nick were saying, that he rises that up in your mind and your heart about how selfish you can really be as a person, and sometimes you don't know it until you're in marriage. And so one of the neat things that God has shown Heidi and I is just kind of that in both of us, and also on the flip side of that is how neat it is that we have a sovereign God who puts the perfect spouse with you. And so when I'm having a down day, Heidi's not, and she can encourage me. And when it's opposite, I can encourage her. And just the beauty that God has knit together, the two of us like that, is really something special. And He knows what He's doing. And it is a perfect picture of Christ and His church, and just how that relationship is supposed to work. And I really appreciated that about our marriage in general, and just. With Heidi in general, she's just amazing. She really is the most amazing person I've ever known, and just the tragedy and the circumstances in her life that she's gone through, the accident, losing her father, and the thyroid cancer, and miscarriages and things like that. And she's so faithful. She really is so faithful. And kind of like you were saying, she brought a whole new dimension to my ministry that wasn't there before. I had all the knowledge, had read all the books, could do all the theology, and really when I married Heidi, that's when I truly got the heart. Not that I wasn't regenerate before or anything like that, but she brought an aspect of the heart to what I was doing that just wasn't there before. And even to this day, she's constantly pushing, like Greg was saying, that, well, that's neat, but how does that apply here? How's that going to affect people? How are you going to use it to shepherd people? And she's always looking that way. She's one of the most faithful, caring people I've ever known, probably the most. Just constantly wanting to be about the body, and we really should reach out to this couple here. We should really do this. We need to invite these people over here. I think you should call this person. And she's always seeing things sometimes that I think a lot of us, because we're so ministry driven in the things that we do, just don't think about sometimes. And that's why God gave us a helpmeet, and I just can't think of a better helpmeet in all the world than how He's been to me with that aspect. So it's been a very beautiful thing, and what an amazing moment I've managed to capture. So
probably the biggest thing that I've learned from marriage is I think early on, even within the couple weeks of being married, Heather and I had a lot of good conversations about how this is such a gift, but it's not an end in itself, that this would be a season, and that with no marriage in heaven, human marriage in heaven, that we would take the season and run hard together and serve better together. I think what Nick said, just the joy, the thrill of ministering and running the race together. But I think experientially for me, as marriage pictures the gospel, I think I taste more deeply of the gospel experientially when you throw two sinners in the mix and sparks are going to fly. There's going to need to be a lot of forgiveness, and there's something about when Heather forgives me. She forgives me with knowledge of all my blunders, and that kind of just captures me up into the gospel. That this person that knows me very well, knows my history, knows my weaknesses, that she would release me, she would forgive me for something. When that happens, I tasted the gospel like no other experience, I think, on this earth. So that's been a great joy to be forgiven by my wife. I mean, forgiven by Christ, but experience that here through her.
I would say what I've learned from Laura is the self-sacrifice. She's got a long list of health issues that probably not many people would even know about, and I don't think I'm exaggerating saying I've probably had close tens of thousands to maybe even 100,000 of people who have been in and out of my home for Bible study, meals. I've never heard her complain. I've never heard her say stop. I've just watched her lose her life for the King, and she just has taught me how to do it beautifully, and I am so grateful for who she is and what she's meant to me in the journey.
We've had some deep trials in relation to postpartum issues with several after the birth of some of our children, and Lana has endured those. Sometimes it just requires endurance, but it's also deepened her desire and ability, I think, to minister to women who go through that, and so she kind of has an eye for young mothers or new mothers, to see how they're doing and kind of check up on them in some ways. And she's very open to sharing her own struggles. She doesn't hide that. And it has helped me to have compassion. Back early on, just in the environment we were in and maybe my background, I would have been more, you just need to think better and you need to think truth, and those things are true. And yet when depression hits, and some of that is, especially with postpartum, there's hormonal things going on. And so I saw through her struggles that there is definitely a physical side. Sleep is so important. And so there's more than just thinking truth and thinking right. There's a human side, a physical side, and so it's really helped me with compassion for those who are struggling in that way. And so I'm thankful for those. Those have been hard times, and sometimes bleak times to go through those. But God has used that in our family to grow in compassion and understanding and ability to minister to others who are struggling.
Beautiful. I was counseling with a young man who was getting ready to get married, and I asked him, how do you view marriage? And he said, two sinners running toward Christ, and one turns over to the other, says, would you run with me? And they both run together. So I love that. That's a theme I've seen coming out of here, and praise God for our wives and their ministry to us and to the body.